not seen any actual use of AI for analytics.
So tell me
Like,
about your story. Like, how did you get started and what are you up to these days? Where are you?
graduated in 2012. I was a civil engineer for some time. Then I did a travel startup, and those things did not work out. So I started in analytics in 2013, somewhat by accident.
Yeah.
So I started at WNS, which is a KPO, it's a client-based setup. And it was, compared to now, it was like very basic stuff that we did. Took a short break, tried to get into a couple of different companies, and I ended up in a startup. It was Common Floor. The startup was beginning to grow, so it was a very nice time to be there.
Hmm.
And I was mainly into, I was like the junior most person when I joined, so I naturally got all the reporting work. First 6 to 8 months, I was basically learning everything about reporting, as well as all the data structures were new. So I think new people joined, they were less experienced than I was, and so I passed on those responsibilities. I got into analytics, and I was there for 1.5 year when Common Floor was acquired by Quicker. And I got into a product analyst, product manager kind of role. It was a very small startup, so the role was not very well defined. Uh, there was not much data, so it was a bit of analytics, and then I just got into product management. The category we were in was completely destroyed when Geo launched. So 2016, the startup kind of laid off half of the company, and so I was also out.
Okay.
Good for me because I was trying to be out. I was a bit tired of like analytics and then startups also after these two experiences. So I thought, maybe I'll do something else. I tried to get into web development because that sort of was happening a lot at that time.
Hmm.
Uh, I thought I'll get into content back then, and I couldn't figure out like what to say, what to talk about, and those things. Trying to learn development and then trying to understand content. I just thought, let me get back to data. Uh,
The one that you like.
so yeah, the one that I actually enjoyed. It was 2017, and took about a month and a half, and I got into Kiwi. Kiwi was into a lot of different things, but mainly products around entertainment. And at Kiwi, I was the junior most analyst when I joined,
Hmm.
so naturally reporting came to me, and I was doing that for about 6 to 8 months, and then because of funding issues and some other issues, the analytics team left, and there were five of us, and then there was just me within a
Okay.
period of a month.
Oh.
And so that became my biggest learning experience, like the next 2 years after that.
Hmm.
So so the first thing was like I learned to automate because there was so much work, and I was the only person to do it. So I started automating a lot of things, and I was also hiring.
Okay.
So in the next 1 year, I hired an entire team, mentored a couple of them, and I also had the opportunity to just set up the processes for analytics. These are things I still don't see in a lot of places.
Hmm.
In fact, like at any place which is not mature data wise, you will not see processes. Like, how do you ask analytics to do a job? You just ping them.
Right.
That's not how you ask software developers to do a job, right? It goes into a plan.
Ad hoc requests रहती हैं काफी.
Ad hoc request to natural है, but it's very disruptive the way we get work and the way we uh, work itself. Like एक
Hmm.
project, दूसरा project, just all mixed up, and it's very inefficient.
Right.
So that then creates a frustration that people are not able to learn, then they end up repeating a lot of work. So I focused a lot on just clearing these things so the team was able to learn more, or that was the plan, that was the hope. And the other thing I worked on a lot was just data quality. Then COVID came, and then we were working remotely for a while, but we were able to deliver quite comfortably during COVID,
Oh, nice.
whatever was required. So that was my data analytics journey. I took a break in February 2022 to
Okay.
pursue writing. Uh,
Writing about?
Again, I don't know, but don't know in the sense don't know how to write about it. But yes, it's the philosophy of life or the this life itself, matlab not about particular things, but
Mhm.
life
Okay.
and how it is for people like us in our generation right now,
Hmm.
and then compare it to before. So
So do
those
you
kind of
have a blog
things.
where you put up your thoughts?
No,
Okay.
it's all on my desktop.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, but tried it from various angles. Even tried to get published with newspapers and magazines, and write a blog for some time, but didn't know how to promote it at that time.
Okay.
So, so all of that went on for about a year and a half, and then I thought I'll go back to analytics.
Okay.
But this time I didn't want to go into a company because we got seen the cycle of analytics is quite simple. Unless you go to a mega, like it's a big company or a startup that has grown a lot, then
Mm.
you will do some other things, but then it will be very narrow. So I didn't like those ideas. So right now I am setting up on my own consultancy and trying to find a niche where I can solve problems in analytics.
What
So
is it
that's
called?
where, yeah. So it's called Analytics Advantage. It's
Okay.
called that because in my head it's like is an advantage that you can get for your startup. So that's how the name came to be. Also, it was available, which is not that common these days. So yeah,
So you're primarily catering to startups mainly.
I uh, that's my experience also, right? So makes sense to start there. But then I'm discovering that even older companies are pretty much at the same stage data wise. So yeah, right now I'm just trying to work with startups.
Okay. So I would like to understand, Adi, like what are the three things a startup or a company, they should have their processes in the right place, or currently they don't, but they are essential to the entire setup.
So it depends on the stage of the startup, but the basics are always the same. You want clean data, so you want processes for clean data, and not
Mm.
just clean data, but you want complete data. You want to track everything important happening in your app or website. So that's one part where you have clean and complete data. The second part is that you need tracking. You need clarity on what are your important metrics, what are your KPIs, what are the things that everyone in the company should know. Everyone that looks at numbers or that makes decisions should be aware of. And the third part is just to run analytics more in a way that you run your developer teams, which is in a planned fashion so that it's more effective.
Hmm.
That's, I think, a good start.
Okay. So till now, like what has been the best project experience for you, where all these three things probably were there in place, or you set it up?
These three things are like the entire life cycle of analytics. So, not have them, but uh, so when when we were in his place, when these three things were set up, I was already the analytics manager and I was not doing as much hands-on.
Okay.
So uh, the benefits of all this felt to other people. But uh, I can't really say a favorite project because uh, the way we work is we deliver the insights, right? Uske baad to it's
It's up to
gone
them.
on to the product. Yeah. So, so I did a very long analysis on retention, which was we had a games app. We had a lot of games in our app, and we were trying to figure out how to keep them longer, how to keep the users longer on the app.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when you look at retention, you basically eventually reach to the same conclusion that users who have a better experience will
Hmm.
stick around for longer. And then you try to define the best experience, the users who are having the best experience. And within that, you have to untangle. Some users will have a good experience on this app, even if it's much worse. And some users will not have a good experience on this app, even if it's better. So you have to untangle that user behavior from the app properties and then try and understand given all this, what are the things that are common across users who are liking the app, not
Hmm.
liking the app, and just figure that out. So it comes out to things like, since it's a game, having a close game just excites you to play another game, and having multiple close games just makes you like fall in love with the game for a while.
Right.
So something as simple as that then comes out of analysis.
Hmm.
It
Understood.
can also be an insight that you already know, but for an analyst, it's something when it comes from data is when we understand it, right?
So while we are talking about the gaming industry, obviously the talk of AI will come into picture, and how exactly is the role changing, the analytics role changing with AI software development?
So far, I've not seen any actual use of AI for analytics. There
Okay.
are always there will be something that happens in maybe next year or the year after that, because everyone is stuck with two major issues. One, your data is so bad that who will you blame for bad data if it's AI doing the work, right? Right now you blame analytics, but later where will the blame go? So people will not just start asking AI to give them data and then work with that wrong data, right?
Hmm.
So there is one issue of data quality. The other issue is talking to AI, especially about numbers. So I've tried it with several tools, and uh, the moment it gets complicated, I'm not able to explain what I want to the tool.
Hmm.
And if that step is not clear, then I cannot trust the output I get. Like,
Right.
if it's not clear what I said, then I don't know what it's saying back to me. So those two steps are they'll be hard to crack for some time, because even in an organization, communication between analysts and other teams is difficult. We
Hmm.
talk very much with numbers. People talk very much with ideas, and when the AI tools are basically trying to replace the analyst with a platform that will answer your questions or
Correct.
allow you to do analysis yourself.
Hmm.
But for that, you need to have that familiarity with working with numbers, which is just not there.
Right.
So yeah, nothing right now, but maybe in a couple of years we'll get tools which will understand these things better, and we'll have to work on data quality to use those tools, and we'll have to train people to just work directly with these tools. So
From what I
I'm
know,
not
I
sure.
think analysts are using, AI for probably query development, right? Like how to even write good queries. I think that's one piece that can be replaced entirely. Yeah, I understand in terms of data capturing, a human has to tell or, share that information. What parameters are you looking for? Hmm.
Right. So even there, like the pain with queries is if you write a query, I can't verify it. I mean, I can, but I don't want to, because it it's it takes a lot of mental effort to read someone else's query. So if I ask AI to write me a query,
Hmm.
then I have to verify it because the output is still mine, right?
Correct.
So I personally find it much easier to just take care of it
Yeah.
rather than ask AI to write it and then verify.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, it's at least in terms of just correcting your errors and those things, it's good.
Or maybe data cleanup as well, right?
Not no one is working on it. Uh, No one wants to work on it either right now. So everyone is going for the big prize, which is, platform that answers your questions.
Correct. But I think the foundation is data cleaning, right? Like if you don't have good data, then what are you
You
basing it?
can't.
Yep. Okay. So another thing I wanted to ask is the three essential tools that any startup would should invest in or that you use regularly.
Right. So there are only three tools actually, more or less.
Okay.
One is SQL, so you write queries. One is Python, so you write some code and do some data science. And then you have Excel or Google spreadsheet where you do all the actual work. So
Hmm.
that's all. Like people with 20 years of careers in analytics, I just use them. Previously, there were many others, but I think Python has replaced most of them. So
Correct.
now you just do use Python for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Lot of tools, but they serve a lot of different purposes, right? We are talking about analytics, then we are talking about uh, querying data and analyzing it, and then giving some outputs or insights or building data science models. So analytics scope is limited to that.
Hmm.
But if you think about data engineering or machine learning, then it's a much wider world, right?
Hmm.
So data engineering, the number of tools may be in thousands, and they would fall in 6 to 8 broad categories. Some of them do all the things at once, and some do just one of these components very well, right?
Right.
But those those are not tools analysts use.
Hmm.
For analysts, the meaningful tools are one, you have dashboarding platforms. So dashboarding platforms, again, you just write queries. So you're doing SQL, but within the platform.
Right.
And then you have um, analytics platforms, so mixed panel kind of places, where the purpose of those platforms is to enable analytics without analysts.
Hmm.
So again, not, but we also use them when good for getting started on an analysis. Just easily you can see a lot of things. But again, those are not analytics tool as much as
Hmm.
analytics platforms for others.
Got it. I also started with analytics in reporting essentially, but it was mostly Excel. And then from there on, because Excel could not take the load of the data I was looking at, I started learning Python to, actually be able to analyze more and create reports, automate a lot of stuff. My main motivation was automation. And I think one of the answers that I always wanted or was looking for was how to how to start this journey when it comes to analytics, how to even be a good analyst, what are the traits that one should have. People who are wanting to start their careers, probably they are interested but they don't know how to do it. So can you talk about it?
Right. That's a lot. So let's keep aside people who are starting their careers, because for them it's more like focus more on getting into a role, and then you'll figure out later
Mhm.
how to get better at it. Those are two very different things. Like cracking interview is separate.
Hmm.
So before you start your career, focus on getting into a place, and for that you are going to need some skills, right? Whatever you need to crack interviews. Mainly, it will be SQL, it will be a bit of Python, and it will be just you need to get good at working with numbers. Um, so
So this
just
would be
practice,
something for people who have never done analytics before, right? This would be the starting point that you learn a bit of SQL, you get into Python, at least learn pandas or NumPy. I would say like these are the two libraries that one should definitely get to know.
right?
Because I think we all of us start from Excel initially and then go on to, I don't know, complex libraries. But yeah, these two. And what was the third thing that you said?
Uh, just working with numbers.
Hmm.
Uh,
Be more comfortable with it.
it's like you want to be good at mental calculations. You see two numbers, try and add them, multiply them, play with them, right? because especially in interviews,
Hmm.
if you're giving an analytics interview, at least when I'm taking it, I'm very, uh, I want to see your numbers should be correct. And if you are making obvious mistakes and you're not able to catch your mistakes,
Hmm.
that's not a good sign because you'll be working with numbers like 8 hours a day. Like that's your full job, right? So
Right.
you should be very comfortable with numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Not statistics, but just working with numbers, plus, minus, multiply, these kind of things.
So, what is that one trait that you look for when you're hiring an analyst?
Right. So I just look for seriously, I just look for humility. I mean, there are so many smart people, right, in the job market, so that's not a problem. You can get people who are, and the skills are not that difficult to learn. So I am mainly looking at people who will be okay with taking a feedback
Okay.
because it's just about learning, right? So the technical bits will be easy to get, but
Hmm.
all the other bits like how to work with different teams, how to communicate better, uh, how to analyze better, like those will be taught through feedback by the team, by everyone else. And so you need to be really good at taking feedback initially. So I just look for that.
Okay. When in your experience, your peers or people when you hire, what is that one thing that they get wrong about their careers, like especially in analytics?
One, I mean, some common misconceptions or ideas people have. One is that you will directly get into business problem solving. You will not, right? You have to start with reporting. That initial part of your career has to be reporting and getting good at technical skills, and then you get into business problems,
Mm-hmm.
which is analysis, right? The other is people think they will, take this shortcut into product management, which happens, which works, but again, it takes time. Uh, So if that, and it creates a lot of friction within companies, within teams, and it causes a lot of pain to people.
Hmm.
So it's better that if you want to get into product management, prepare for it and get into it rather than get into analyst and then keep trying.
Okay.
So those are my experiences. And the one last thing is that, it takes time. Uh, I
Yeah.
mean, you can get a title change very quickly, but to learn those skills and just get, comfortable with one level of skills and then the next level of skills, it
Hmm.
takes 2 to 3 years. If you're working like a normal person and not 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
So it takes around 2 to 3 years to go from one level to next and be ready to give that time. Don't
Hmm.
be in too much of a hurry.
Also like to know about like freelancers, right, who want to start their own analytics journey. Like, what has been your experience?
Right. So I'm from a purely technical background, right? Uh, Engineering college and then all these jobs with analytics. There's no consulting is all about sales if you're doing it on your own.
Right.
Uh, it's really about if sort of figuring out all these things that you never cared about, like clients kahan se aata hai, what kind of services do you offer, how do you even reach people and tell them that you do something, how do
Hmm.
you price your work. So it's a uh, totally different thing from analytics. Like the analytics bit is kind of easy because you've already done that quite a bit, but all the other things will be much more difficult to figure out, and you have to figure out to actually set yourself up.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's my learning so far because I'm in that stage myself.
Yeah. Some startup that they want to just start hiring for an analytics team, what do you think should be a hiring plan look like for analytics?
Uh, so it will depend on the size of the startup or the stage of the startup. If it has just launched and there's very little data, but they want someone.
Mm-hmm.
then it makes sense to go for someone, either a fresher who has done some courses, so knows the tech at least, or
Okay.
you go with someone with 1 or 2 year experience and who is willing to work on reporting for a bit, because you'll need those things set up first.
Right.
If uh, if it's a larger company, then or a startup in the next stage, then you'll want to build an entire team. So it makes sense to start with. You always start with reporting analysts because base layer, they will create the base layer. But then it makes sense to quickly hire someone to lead the team with four
Right.
to 6 to 8 years of experience, uh, and then let them build the team for themselves. In the earlier days, analytics was generally sometimes placed under CFOs, and so that was strange. But it makes sense if it's under someone like a CMO or a CPO, someone who is much more data oriented, especially in a smaller startup.
Right. Adi, can you
Right.
tell me about good resources that people in analytics should definitely read and follow?
Right. So, so there's ampli like you have these big product platforms, analytics platforms like Mixpanel and Amplitude, and there are some others. I'll come to it. Uh, if you want to understand product analytics, if you want to understand it from the viewpoint of product or executives, you should go and read all the materials they have, and because it's just really really good. Like they've talked about everything in a practical way.
Okay.
So there are those. Then, if you want to understand some data engineering basics, head to Mode or Holistics, and again they have like full courses, but you don't need to read them. They have small ebooks that detail like what is the process, why does it matter, those kind of things. Try those, and find there are so many influencers on LinkedIn, and some of them are really good. So find some that appeal to what you're doing
Hmm.
and start actually learning and following Mahase. So just that. But the main thing is the job you will do is very limited. It's narrow when you're at a company. So the more you learn and the more you keep yourself open to learning different kind of things, the better you will get at your job. So focus on learning something good continuously.
Hmm. You've worked in a startup and various industries, right? And now you're working independently. How your life has changed?
Right. Uh, so life had become pretty much set while I was working at startups. It was the same routine. It has to be, right? You have to go to office. But then COVID happened and life was suddenly very different, especially the first few months when we were locked in Bangalore in our homes, had
Hmm.
too much free time, couldn't go out, so work and then nothing. And then we decided that since we don't have to go to office, we can just live in a place that we like. So we went to Goa, and then we ended up in Himachal Pradesh in Dharamshala. And again, life's very different since I don't have to go to office. Uh, Also, since it's not convenient living in a small town, so you have to do all your work, you have to get your groceries, you have to cook your food and do all those things, uh, which you sort of like. And then when you have free time, you just go out and you have nature at your disposal. You can just take a short ride and then you're in the mountains, or if you're in Goa, you take a short ride and you're on the beach, and then it's just good life. And you can also set your work hours. So I prefer to work early in the mornings and then take a long break, back to work in the afternoons. So it just allows me that flexibility to work when I'm generally more focused. So yeah, life's very, very different. It's almost a totally new kind of life.
Yeah.
Uh,
Something we're not used to.
something we should not get used to if it doesn't last. It's very different kind of life. So you don't go to office, which means you don't make friends at work. You're also not in Bangalore, so all your school friends and college friends are not just living in your same colony, right? So there are these kind of challenges which you don't imagine in life, right? Oh, where will I meet people? So you gradually get used to it. You get used to different modes of doing things, meeting people. You're friends with people who are very, very different. Some are much older, some are much younger. And yeah, it's you do everything by yourself.
Hmm.
So there's that, like, you don't have as much free time as you imagine you will have. And in a lot of ways, life is very much the same. You do your Netflix, you do your YouTube. So those things are constant. Like, you can live here and be the same person you are, or you can live here and try to be whatever kind of person you imagine yourself to be. Like, you have that freedom.
Right.
So it's really how you take this on.
So I heard that you're also you like to organize these treks over the weekends. Uh, do you have a group that's active?
It's in progress. It's so it's one of those things, right? As I said, you need different modes of meeting people.
Hmm.
So I love going to the mountains, and I just post every week when I'm going. If anyone wants to join, I tell my friends if anyone wants to join. And yeah, sometimes new people show up. Sometimes it's just the same old people. Sometimes it's just me. But uh, yeah, trying to grow a community.
That's really nice.